The next unit in our class is pastries, and pastries entail many different types of dough that are turned into wonderful end products. And today we're going to learn about one of those specific types of dough. So, what is a pastry? Well, like I said, pastry refers to a large group of doughs, but basically what they have in common is the dough itself is pretty much flour, water, and fat. So, pastry can refer to the dough, but pastry can also refer to the end product that are made with these doughs. And pastries can be sweet or they can be savory. So, there's two types of pastries that they are divided into, and that is dependent on how the fat is incorporated in. So, those two types are laminated and non laminated. Laminated is when you have your fat source and it's repeatedly folded into the dough. And so, some examples of that are puff pastry, danishes, and croissants, and we'll be looking into those later. Then we have non laminated, and that's where you cut or rub or melt your fat source into the flour. So we have cut in fat with flour before, like when we made biscuits. Another example of that is pie and tart crusts. You do that same technique with. The fat source for pastries is going to be butter or shortening. And actually, shortening is more common in pastries because with pastry, you typically want a flaky or crumbly end product. And because shortening stays colder for longer, okay, so it has a higher melting point than butter, the fat will stay cold. And so, shortening is just preferred a little bit more in pastry over butter. But you can use butter and many recipes will call for that. You just have to make sure you work with it when it is cold. So, different types of pastry doughs that we're going to be looking at. So, the first one is pate choux dough, and we're going to be looking at that this week. Then there's pie and tart dough, phyllo dough, puff pastry, and meringue is kind of the outlier because meringue is a mixture of egg whites and sugar, but it's used to complement or it's used in a lot of pastries and pastry doughs, and so meringue gets looped in with there too. So, we are going to focus on pate choux dough this week. It's one of my favorite doughs to work with, and it makes a lot of great end products. So, what is pate choux dough? Well, pate choux, it's a paste made from flour, water, butter, and eggs. And you can see in the picture there, it looks kind of like fluffy Play Doh almost. It bakes into a very golden brown, crisp pastry. But what is unique about this is that inside there's mostly air pockets with bits of moist dough. And so this dough has a lot of eggs in it, and so it's kind of eggy as well. You can fill it with whipped cream, sweet cream, custard, fruit, other mixtures. And you can shape this a lot of different ways. A lot of times it's going to be just almost like how a drop cookie, the dough is just dropped onto the baking sheet. So you can do that with pate choux dough. Or more often, it's piped into specific shapes to get your end pastry. So, pate choux dough is unique because you actually cook the paste of flour, water, butter, and eggs over the stove on a saucepan, and then you shape it. So you pipe it or you drop it, and then you bake it. And so that's kind of interesting. So you can see the process here, but I'm going to be demonstrating the process for you tomorrow. The biggest thing with this is when you put these in the oven to bake, they're baked at a very high temperature of 400 or more. And so what causes that to happen is a lot of steam. And steam is what helps these to rise during baking. So if you open your oven at all during baking, the steam will escape and your pate choux dough will not rise or puff like it is supposed to. So pate choux dough can be made into 8 different pastry variations. And this is the pastry variations. So the first one is it can be made into cream puffs. You can also call those profiteroles, eclairs, beignets, churros, crullers, the G one that I never say correctly, Paris Brest, and then croquembouche. So for your assignment today, you guys are going to be looking up each variation of pate choux dough. So what are these end products? What do they look like? And that's what you're going to be doing today in Google Classroom. And then tomorrow I will demonstrate how exactly you make pate choux dough.